So welcome everyone. Like I said, my name is Katie, and I am the owner and operator of EIEIO Farm in Yellowknife. We're a small urban farm downtown, um, and I also have a 2-year-old and 4-year-old who do lots of gardening with us. So I'm going to share some fun things that we do, as well as some tips for engaging children in gardening as well. So to get us started, if we can just go around and you can let me know your name, which community you're in, and then children's ages as well. And then if you have any gardening goals for this summer. So we'll start with you, Lisa.
Okay, I'm Lisa. I'm in Yellowknife. This is my youngest daughter, Tara. She's 5. And what are our goals this year for planting? To actually have my peas grow. I guess transplanting was my big. Yeah, I had good growth inside, and then I transplanted out, and yeah. So that's mine.
And Kate.
Oh yeah, Kate's your other sister.
Okay. And what was your name again? Sorry, I missed.
Tara.
Tara. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And then Laura, if you would like to introduce yourself, let us know what community you're in.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm in Yellowknife. I was mostly just tuning in to sort of watch. I do not have children, but I have children I like to spend time with. So yeah, I'm mostly just here to listen. Hi, everyone.
Great. Laura is my friend, and she helps garden with my kids all the time. So she can pick up extra tips. All right. So my first tip with gardening with kids is to plant for success as well as for immediate action. Obviously, even as adults, we get really impatient with how long some plants take to start or to really progress, as well as great frustration when we put time and effort into things and then either they're not successful or we have some type of issue along the way. So some of the things that it's convenient that everyone is in Yellowknife because that's where I have experience. But some of the things that are kind of guaranteed successes here are greens. So things like kale, chard, spinach. Spinach is actually a thing that we are uniquely suited for. And spinach does not like hot weather. So while we can't grow hot peppers, we can grow a lot of spinach. And then things like kale and chard also are just really fun. You know, they're bumpy, they're different colors if you do like the rainbow chards, that type of thing. Other good things are radishes because they grow so fast. Beets, also they grow really fast and they're just so fun to pull out of the ground. And then things like vines, so cucumbers, zucchini, squash, because they look really cool as they're growing and they grow really fast. They don't always produce a lot of product, but they're a kind of a fun one early season. I've got this oh so sophisticated planter here. This plant is a zucchini. This plant is something called a jelly melon. They were planted the same day, and the zucchini is already this much bigger, and actually some of the jelly melons haven't even germinated yet. So although zucchini can be frustrating to get much off of it, it is a fun, engaging one for kids early in the season. And then another tip is to plant what they like. So think about the vegetables that your kids enjoy eating and then plant those, because we're all willing to put much more effort and time into something that we know we're gonna love eating. So for me, my favorite vegetable are beets. I will go out and like care for my beets. I'll thin them. I'll make sure they're planted perfectly. Whereas things like radishes, I don't actually like them. My husband and children do, and they're a fun thing to plant. I'm not willing to put as much effort into it as maybe my husband or kids are. So Tara, what kind of veggies do you love to eat? Ooh, good. Those are good looking radishes.
Mm-hmm.
Grandma, me and Kate. They're not mine.
You like to eat kale? Yeah?
Me.
So we have kale planted. Radishes, I think my mom picked them because they're quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nice thing with radishes, you'll have them before they like even mid.
And we planted peas and bok choy.
Sorry, peas and bok choy were the other ones that we planted. I just missed what you said, Katie.
Oh, I was gonna say radishes. Yeah, they're such an early crop, especially where you've started them inside, that you could have them by like mid to late June that you're picking
Okay.
up.
Two more
Great.
people not ready.
The other kind of the flip side of that is if there are vegetables or fruit that your kids don't always want to eat, growing them can be a good way to get them to enjoy them. So sometimes with my 4-year-old, if there's a vegetable that we've grown, she's much more likely to give it a try than maybe if it's just from the store. So that's been a way with some veggies that maybe she said before she didn't want to try. Once we grew them, she was willing to at least give them a try. So that's one for moms and dads to think about. What are the things you want them eating? And then to think about things to put in the garden that can engage all of the senses. So plants that are going to cause different visuals. So with our front garden, we like to mix both vegetables, flowers, and fruit, so that it visually is different. Lots of different smells. So for the different flowers as they're coming, maybe the smell of the vegetables, and then sound as well. So planting things that are going to encourage pollinators. So you're going to hear the buzzing of bees or the see the butterflies flapping, that type of thing. And one new thing we're going to try this year, I've put a few different links in the group chat, but the last one, the toddler garden, is we're actually going to build a garden box that's the perfect size for our daughter to maintain on her own, and then let her plant whatever she wants in there. And then that way, it's also giving her that responsibility to grow with that. So Kate and Tara, if you could grow any vegetable, what vegetable would you want to grow?
I would go cauliflower.
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
Pepper.
Peppers, okay. Those are both really yummy vegetables. And Lisa, if you could grow anything, what's your most favorite thing to grow, or something that you would love to try to grow?
Your comment about beets would be my go-to up here. Yeah. So.
Those are all great things to want to grow. We're trying cauliflower. I think we tried it last year and we got one tiny little head like this big. But we had direct seeded, so we had seeded it right in the soil outside. So we had to wait until, mid-June. This year we've started some inside in hopes that we're going to get some. And I'm with you, Kate, on the peppers. I want to grow peppers every year. And we have 2 greenhouses, so we're little more set up to grow them, but we still get very tiny peppers, but they're so delicious. So things to think about when gardening with kids is obviously safety. So thinking about the plants that can end up being prickly. So, you know, farmers down south purposely plant rows upon rows of pumpkins around their other plants, and that's because they get so prickly that there's actually a pest management system. So it's important to think about things like vines that early on don't look like they will become a safety issue, but they can definitely get pretty prickly and scratchy. So keeping those just away from the edges of gardens, putting them further back, and then that way kids are less likely to touch them. You can get kid-sized gloves, so you know, like standard, you know, leather work glove style. Not for the smallest kids. My 4-year-old is just starting to be able to fit into gloves. Dust masks. Now that everybody has, you know, or getting fabric masks, they can be dual purpose. That when you're doing things like shaking soil or like filling bins, you can get a lot of particulate coming up in the air. We only use, you know, like organic fertilizers, but still, it's best to take precautions with things like masks and gloves. And then we just take care of fertilizing ourselves, so our kids aren't actively involved in that part. But the other thing, along with getting kids gloves, is there are lots of great kids tools, gardening tools now that are actually really high quality. So I remember when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm. We always had like plastic kids tools that would like break instantly. I'd be so excited to go out with my great grandfather to plant potatoes and then break a shovel. But a lot of the like quality garden companies are now making tools for kids too. So they can last a lot longer, and then just add that much more interest. If you're getting to use your own tools that are made for you, you're not going to be frustrated about using things that are too big, that type of thing. And we kind of talked about this a bit, but like another tip is thinking about the reasonable plant options. So again, this isn't as much of a concern where everyone is in Yellowknife, so most of the things we've talked about are reasonable for here. But there's obviously some things that just we can try our best, but may not grow here. So Sydney has wanted us to grow watermelons every single year, and we've progressively bought like sourced seeds for smaller and smaller watermelons. So this year we're growing ones that should basically be the size of like a grapefruit, I think, like in hopes that we might actually get one. We usually get very small ones off the plants that we have grown, but there's some things that for us just have not worked, and like we're starting to move on from. So we always have a problem with cabbage fly larvae in any of our turnips. And I love turnip, and every year I plant like an entire garden of turnips, and then they all end up with holes in them from the worms. Our chickens love them. It's a really great benefit for them. But for us, we finally have accepted that we're no longer putting the energy into that. So that's also something to think about. And also the things that maybe you really want to grow, but that need expensive equipment or like a greenhouse, that type of thing may be better to avoid. So as much as it's hard to believe with the snow yesterday, we are already at May 19th. So hopefully, 2 to 3 weeks from now, we can be into time to start planting out. But there are things that you can still start inside, because we do still have, probably 3 weeks at least to transplant, to about 4 to 5 weeks really. So if you wanted to start things inside still, greens any of them, spinach, lettuce, kale, chard. Those can all be started inside still. And what we like to do is we plant them every 2 weeks, so that we get kind of 3 different sets of harvest out of them. Cauliflower still could be planted inside, and broccoli, as well as cabbages, and then the squash and vines. Like I said, they take off very quickly. But there's other things that at this point, you're going to be better off to direct seed when the soil is workable. So depending on whether you have a raised bed, have greenhouses, or planting in the ground, when things are workable will depend on those. But so peas don't take transplant well. They're the root and even the vine of them can be kind of fragile. So if you are going to seed them inside, you might want to do something like an egg carton where you can plant the whole bottom, which is also why I've planted these zucchini and melons in here, because the same thing, any of the vines, the root are kind of fragile. So things like peas and other vines, it's good if you're starting them inside to start them in something like an egg. And then other things to plant directly outside are beets. They take off pretty quickly, and again would be hard to transplant. Potatoes. I'm pushing it this year with some of our potatoes. I've done a bit of winter gardening research over the past winter. And some people say you can plant when the soil is down to, up to 4 degrees. So I'm kind of planting mine in different stages to see when you really could push it with potatoes. Carrots are a great dormant seed. So I could go outside and plant them now, and they will just wait. And then when it's good weather for them, then they'll start to germinate. Same thing with parsnips. And then radishes and greens also could be planted directly in the next few weeks as well. And then the same thing, they will just germinate when they're ready. Some people get worried with planting inside that they're going to need a lot of expensive, the little jiffy pots, like the little pucks, or that they're going to need, store-bought containers. We have some that we've collected over the years, but then we also use whatever we have. So egg cartons, we keep all of those to use as planters. Toilet rolls, and this is a nice simple seeding thing that just is a toilet roll with 3 little cuts, and you can fold them in on themselves to make a base, and then you'd want to put these in a tray, which I don't have any right here at my seating table, but you'd want to put a bunch in a tray to keep, so they would use each other to stay upright. One thing with both these, or people also do like a newspaper one where you roll it around a soup can and then squish up the bottom. Because they're small and you don't want to overwater them, so obviously they would start to fall apart, they can dry out quickly. So if you're seeding in something paper-based, you want to water just a little bit, but often. And the nice thing with this or the newspaper one is, again, if you're planting something that's going to be fragile for transplant, you just rip it and just plant the whole thing. So that can be a good option if you're looking to plant inside still. Like I said, we do or have containers that we've kind of just accumulated over the years, but then we also use things like pop bottles. We just cut them in half. With this, I don't know if you see how intense the roots are. They're all the way around this whole thing. So when I go to plant this, I will have to cut the bottle. There's no way I'll be able to pull it out. But sunflowers, again, are another good quick crop. This plant is probably about 4 weeks old. Actually, no, probably about a month and a half. But They take off very quickly. This one needs some straightening. So we have sunflowers growing in Coke bottles as well as cut off milk, 4-liter milk jugs. And again, they're in there. And they're just, things we already have at home. So they're a great thing to do seeding in. If you are looking to purchase seeding supplies, then things like the little Jiffy pucks are great. They stay contained. One thing to think about with those when you do go to transplant is to rip the mesh, because otherwise the roots or the plant will have to put so much energy into getting out of the mesh that it's not putting as much energy above the ground. So if you kind of rip it apart and then plant the whole thing, that's good. We are testing out these new pots here. They're called cow pots. They're made out of cow poop. And we're growing all of our zucchinis, cucumbers, pumpkins, for most of them in these right now. And when we go to plant them, we have to rip them apart and plant the whole thing. And then they're beneficial compost. So they're kind of dual purpose. So those are a few seeding options if you are planting inside. Some people who don't have lights or want to increase the light that's coming in through the window, you could use things like a salad container, or the lid from, if you get a rotisserie chicken, you can use that whole container. You can plant in the bottom part and then use the top also as a greenhouse. So lots of things that you can find around your house to get started with seeding. And like I said, there are lots of options still. Even it being mid-May, there's still seeding options inside. And I'll go through a few different plants or things to look for with seeds. So like I said, radishes are not my favorite, but they do grow quickly, and kids love picking root vegetables because there's the fun of seeing the plant growing above the soil, but having no idea what's going on under the soil. So getting to pluck them out of the ground is really engaging for kids. So we picked these up from Arctic Farmers, so here in town, and these will go directly in the soil. So things to look for when purchasing seed packages or in a seed catalog are the number of days. This one doesn't actually have. So we've got the number of days. So that's in prime condition, how long it would take from seed to harvest. So in a prime condition, this early white Vienna kohlrabi would grow in 55 days. We generally take that as a bit of a guideline. We add a few days. But generally in Yellowknife, you want to look for things that are no more than 90 days. So our long days of sun kind of make up for how short our season is, but still you don't want to go much over 90 days. So these ones from TNT, they all have the day right under the name. West Coast Seeds, they have the name, or sort of the days down on the bottom of the description. And West Coast Seed, Boreal Garden themselves. And then we have a couple from Canadian Tire, the Mackenzie seeds, and they just have the days just right on the front. So the other thing to look for on your seed package to know what to do is it will say in this description, either on the back or on the front or on the back, how to seed. So whether to direct seed, or if it's suggesting to seed inside, it will say the number of weeks before the anticipated last frost. And then it also will give the instructions for how deep to put the seeds and how close together. So different plants end up taking up a very different amount of space. So you want to read that information. We tend to seed as well as transplant closer than suggested, just because we don't have as much space, we don't have as much time. We try to get everything as intensive as possible. So some plants that have really helped with getting kids into the garden for us is kohlrabi. I don't know, Laura or Shauna, if you've eaten kohlrabi before, but when it's in its plant form, it looks very alien-like, sort of. So it's a bulb that then has all these little plants growing out of the side. So it's cool in that it's kind of like a root vegetable as far as it's like you're eating this bulb from the bottom, but the bulb is actually above the ground, unlike root vegetables. So it's really cool as you're growing it, and then it's fun for kids to pluck all of those little leaves off when it's ready. Cauliflower is another one that could still be seeded inside, and cauliflower is Sydney's favorite vegetable. She requests it all the time, so this year I think we're planting about twice as much cauliflower as we have in the past, and we're as a way to help her stay interested. Carrots, generally kids are excited about growing because again there's the fun top on the or out of the ground and then pulling the carrot out. This year we're also planting these rainbow mix carrots. So as we're pulling them out, there'll be a mixture of purple, red, and orange. So there's the added fun of trying to guess what color the carrots are going to be. The basil is another one that again grows quickly. So basil may not be something a child is going to ask to grow, but it is something that can grow quickly and kind of be fun. If you're planting cucumbers, some people like to do these seed tapes, which somebody seems to have stolen from my seeding table. And basically it's a long strip of really thin paper that then has the seeds stuck in it at all the appropriate distances. So if you're planting things with kids where they're actually putting the seeds in the ground, seed tape can be a good idea to try to control where the seeds are going. So things like I've seen seed tape for like pumpkin seeds or other big seeds. They may not be as necessary as things like carrots. I definitely have seen people do seed tape for carrots with kids and been very appreciative later when they didn't have to thin as much. And then, like I said, sunflowers, again, are a quick grower, or quick to have something there. They will take a long time to actually get to a flower. So this year we've planted mammoths, which are 110 days to maturity. So I'm not banking on getting seeds out of them, but I will at least get the blossoms out of them. And these ones are 12 feet. We didn't actually buy these ones. They came in our Seed of the Month club that we receive. So I generally wouldn't plant the 12-footers, but I'm excited to see how they go. And like I said, the fact that they grow so quickly, and also they're a seed that kids very easily can plant because they're a fairly large seed. So then some other tips is I'm going to screen share a food value chain. So a lot of people talk about the reason that they want to garden with children, or part of it, is to help their children understand where food comes from and the effort that is put into it by growers and producers. So sometimes using a visual with kids is really helpful. I know some of you, especially if you're looking on your phone, this will be really small, but I'll put the link in the chat as well. But this is was referred to as the food value chain. So the different people or organizations that are involved from seed to compost. So you can talk to kids about, you know, that people have to actually farm seeds. Seeds don't just appear at the store. There are specific seed farms. So these are farmers that grow, you know, they'll grow many tomato plants, not necessarily for the tomato, but for the seed inside. And then they will do the drying, the processing, that type of thing. And then farmers, ranchers, home gardeners all use those seeds to grow food. And if it's a business or a larger business, then they go into processing. So, you know, if a tomato farmer grows all their tomatoes and then they either process on site or send to a warehouse to be processed, to go into packaging, make sure that everything is healthy. Then it goes to distributors, so our truck drivers, our airplanes with cargo, that type of thing. Then we get to start seeing the food. We see it at restaurants, we see it at retail stores, grocery stores, the farmer's market. Actually, I guess farmer's market is a more direct link, but and then it goes to the consumers. Either we eat it at a restaurant, we eat it at home, however we are going to eat it. And then it goes to waste disposal. So all of our apple cores and our different waste products can go into either compost or garbage if it's like the packaging, and then the whole thing starts again. So this can be a great talking point for kids. You also can have them draw out the cycle themselves. I've seen different comparison cycles, so showing, you know, this chain would be complete, you know, factory, or sorry, like larger scale growing. And then you could do one with the farmer's market, where it would be the farmer to the market, to the consumer, to waste disposal, or also different ways that we get our food. So that can be, oh, I'm very far from the light switch and somebody decided to turn it off on me. So that can be a good piece as well if you're interested in gardening with kids for that kind of gratitude piece, then this is a good thing to talk about with that. And then in the chat, I have put some different activities. The first one, from teachmemommy.com, is a way that you could get kids planting even in the winter, or if you don't have a space inside to be, you know, playing with soil. It's a fun one that it's just, you know, they can make a flower, stick it on a popsicle stick, and then they can plant it in a egg carton. The second one, the hands-on as we grow, is I don't remember that one. Oh, that one is using different upcycling. So I showed you the pop bottle and the milk jug. That one has a way that you can make a planter out of the 2-liter like milk cartons, or like the juice cartons, that type of thing. And then the playground park bench is a suggestion for different ways you could do seed labeling. So I personally am terrible at labeling. I'm good inside when we're planting in trays, but once we get outside, I just start planting. And even more so if I'm out there with the kids, I'll just let them plant wherever. So we're gonna make the plant labels that I shared the link with there, so that the kids can plant and then they can stick in their plant label where things are. So in my mind I was like, oh, well, we'll be able to tell based on the thing that's growing. But a lot of plants early on look the same. So any of the brachias, the kale, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, radish, they all look the exact same until months in. So we're going to test out or try out those fun seed markers. And there's something that the kids can do ahead of time. So we're going to work on those maybe in the next week or two as a way to get excited about the garden as well. And then, and then as I said, I also shared that the link for the toddler size gardens. So thinking about, what would they love to grow? What are they maybe going to be the most willing to put effort in on? And then giving them their own size garden with their own size tools and that type of thing. Amanda and Izzy, do you have any plants that you're hoping to grow this year?
Yep. Izzy and I started potatoes inside that have gone crazy.
Yes. So when you sent me your potato pictures, I was like, how are they this wild already?
We actually had to take the tomato wire. We had to put those tomato wire plants into the pots because it was just going too extreme. So we have that growing, and then we have basil and I think lettuce and spinach already planted. And then once we get outside, then we're gonna do zucchini, cucumber. Our chives, I think, survived the winter, that they'll come back.
Yeah.
And I think carrots was the other thing we talked about. And then we're taking out our raspberry plants, which is going to be a whole other thing because I'm sure they may still reappear even though we're getting rid of the soil because they just root well. So we're taking those out and putting new soil in, so hopefully not too much will regrow. And then someone's supposed to be bringing us some sunflowers, so we'll see how well they do. I don't know. Our neighbor has sunflowers and they do well, so we'll try a couple just for Izzy's curiosity.
They generally do pretty well as long as they're in as much direct sun as you can give them. And staking. One of the things, one suggestion I have with sunflowers is we learned the hard way last year, and that when we staked them early in the year, we staked them tightly. So these potted ones, right now we have a, what is it called? Not pipe cleaner. Twist tie. When I planted them outside, I tied them on with hemp, and they got so big that they actually cut through the plant. The string did. So this year we're going to be staking them looser, as well as that's going to be, on our weekly chore list is to make sure that we're expanding those. So if you do stake plants that are going to grow a big stalk like a sunflower, make sure you can increase that. Good point about the raspberries. When we bought our house, we had lots of wild raspberries outside, but we wanted more, so we bought bare root stock raspberries. So basically we got sent a plant that has just been made dormant.
Yeah.
And the next year they had all died. They did not take well enough to survive the winter, but then our wild ones have just taken over. So yeah, that's one thing about raspberries is once you have them, they will find new ways to grow.
Yeah.
We have one that has popped up in our chicken coop, or in our run. So we're like, well, our chickens are going to appreciate those raspberries. And you mentioning your chives, that's a good thing to also keep in mind with kids is perennials, because they are the first thing that you're going to see alive. So things like chives, strawberries are also perennial, so they'll usually come back. Rhubarb, our rhubarb is already popped up around, and so it's kind of fun to look around in the leaves right now and find the little red spots. So planting perennials with kids is also a great idea because it's the first thing they're going to see outside in the spring.
Yeah.
So right now we're waiting with our strawberries to see which ones. Some of them are, there's 3 different years worth that we have planted. So we'll see which of last year's come back, and then we have a few other strawberries to go in. But one thing with perennials is it's helpful if you're doing garden beds to keep them all in the same one, just for planning purposes. So right now we just have one bed that was all perennials, and so we just don't plant anything new in it because we know that it will be full. Did you have any questions, Amanda?
Not really, because to be honest, Carolyn, our landlord, does a lot of it, and Izzy tags along mostly with her.
Perfect.
I know.
Okay.
I'm spoiled that way.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I've been trying to plant onions from seed. This is my 2nd year I've tried, and they like won't grow. They'll germinate and then they'll die.
Yeah. Are you like from like tiny seed, like not from the bulbs?
Yeah, from tiny seeds.
Yeah. Yeah, we've never had a lot of success with them either. And because it takes so long, so to do them from seed to get a bulb, like a decent sized bulb in the fall, you would need to start them in like February.
Okay.
And so like I do it every February in hopes. But one of the things that I didn't realize it needs to be done with, if you're planting onions or leeks from seed, is you have to keep giving them haircuts. So they will germinate and be almost like grasses. But if you keep cutting them down, then they will put more energy into their bulb. So that's one suggestion that I've recently received. So not something that I have used yet, or like for a full season yet. But it is one suggestion. We generally just give in and buy the seed bulbs, and then we'll get usually out of like when you plant one tiny bulb, you get 2 large bulbs that grow from it, so it's worth it. But yes, onions and leeks are my like every year I'm gonna figure this out and have not figured it out yet. Also doesn't help that because when they germinate, they're still so small. Like, yeah, they're just like pieces of grass. That they're also the ones that are like the most likely to get knocked over when we go to grab some other plant out of the grow closet, and then like we end up with baby onions everywhere. But yeah, usually my suggestion on onions is just to buy the sets.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Did you have any other questions, Shauna?
No, not really. I'm just trying to think what else isn't working right now for me, but I can't really think. I just started potatoes, or I guess a couple weeks ago, and I put them in a pot that's way too small. So now I'm trying to figure out what's the best option to transplant them into something bigger, but I'm also scared to move them.
Right.
So I don't know what to do next.
What kind of pot are they in? Like, are they something that you can, is it something you can kind of like bend and like get them out of, or?
Yeah, it's like a flower pot. So it was
Oh,
the
okay.
biggest flower pot I had. So I can easily get them out, but I'm just not sure what to put them in. I have raised garden beds in the back of my house. So I'm not sure if I should just put them in one of those. But like, this is my first year ever growing potatoes.
a garden bed, depending on the depth of it, would be an option. Because one of the things, depending on the type of potatoes, some potatoes, they grow their plant and they set their tubers, the actual potatoes, at once. Whereas other ones, you can kind of keep hilling, basically adding soil and covering up the plant until it gets higher and higher. So then you end up with all of this space of soil that the tubers can grow into. So with the types that you can just keep adding to, it doesn't matter how deep the initial flower box or garden box is because you're adding more height. So that would be the only thing. I don't remember offhand which is which, but I can let you know, because if it's one of the ones that you can just keep adding to, then you can put it in a shallower box to start, unless you have really deep garden boxes already.
No, they're not very deep. They're like 10
Okay, yeah.
inches.
Okay, which is deep enough for any of the other roots. So like you'll get decent sized carrots, you'll get good sized beets, all those other root vegetables, but just depending on the type of potatoes. Some need depth right away and some need it later. So like we'll check. All right. I do basically our kind of our gardening partnership is I do the children engagement and the like selling and the choosing what we're gonna grow, and then my husband does all of the science part,
Oh, that's cool.
and the knowing where to grow and how to grow. So I will check with him about the potatoes.
Do you guys do pumpkins?
We do. We have 2 greenhouses, so we have the ability to grow some inside. We haven't done that with pumpkins. We've just grown them outside and have gotten like itty bitty baby ones. But last year was our first year getting a pretty actually decent size sugar pumpkin. So the pumpkins that you use like for pies they don't grow as big anyway because they're kind of very concentrated with their sugar. So I'm going to try those outside again this year. But we've planted them inside. I think that's one thing we hadn't done with vines before, was give them a lot of time inside first, so that when they get outside, their focus is on the vegetable, like producing the fruit.
Do you keep them covered?
Yes.
Keep them
So
in the
we, or even outside, we'll put row cover on them. So like that plastic, or not plastic, the like white plant fabric. You also could just use like a bed sheet or anything, because they don't like cold wind. So that's one thing to think about with vines, is putting them somewhere where they're protected from the wind. And then if it's getting cool at night, then putting a garden blanket on them. But during the day, all summer we have the cover off because they love the sun.
Is that the same for squash?
Yeah, so like squash, cucumber, zucchini, and pumpkin, they're all basically the same plant, but they just will grow different fruit. So you want to treat them all the same way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. So thank you to you both and everyone else who has kind of joined throughout, for joining me for this. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us at EIEIO Farm on Facebook, or our Instagram is EIEIO _YK. And I'm happy to answer questions or give you any tips or anything. And I usually share activities that we're doing with our kids as well. So if you ever need ideas, you can check out on there and see different gardening things that we're doing with our kids. So thank you to Aboriginal Sports Circle for inviting me to be part of your wellness workshops. And Amanda, good luck tonight on your workshop. I'll join you for some cardio remix. So thank you, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye,
Yeah.
Shauna.
Bye.